Hi, I'm Gordon Brickell from Filmmaker U. At Filmmaker U, we create courses for film professionals to deepen and diversify your existing skill set. You can learn more at filmmakeru.com, or of course, follow us on Instagram at filmmaker_u. Every week, we interview a film professional to discuss their work, and this week I'm joined by cinematographer Michael Balfry, whose work includes Dead Zone, Trial and Error, and more recently, Netflix's live-action adaptation of Avatar: The Last Airbender, just to name a few things. Welcome to the show, Michael.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
I would like to know, so when you got onto Avatar, it is such a beloved animation. So what was the pressure like to bring this animation to the live action, and what were some of the things you had to tackle to do that transition?
From a DP's perspective, it was respecting the visual style that was established on such a brilliant series, and paying homage as we were going through through the episodes. Early on, Michael Goy, who was on the show as a director and producer, and he also was the DP on an episode. Albert Kim, the showrunner, producer. We sat around and we talked about where the show should go visually. And again, like I mentioned, we want to pay homage. I mean, there were a lot of nice close-ups, wide angle things showing vistas, two shots of Katara and Sokka, showing them as a team. Even the three shots when Aang is in there, we had to remember to keep that connection going. And then you have the Fire Nation, the bad guys, a little lower, sometimes a little more intense in the close-ups, as you can see throughout the series. Those were, and those are kind of, you could say they're standard discussions, but at the same time, we had to keep reminding ourselves of the original series. We'd always go back when I was working with the two directors, Jabbar and Jet. Again, we say, hey, in the series, we did this. And we'd go back and we would, look at snippets as reference just for motivation to where we should go with visually. From my perspective, visually, from a director's point of view, storytelling, which is part of my job as well. So those are the kind of subtle discussions we'd have. There were no huge, sitting down for hours and hours and hours on end, basically because it was a really busy show. Prep was very intense, very, very in depth, because it being a fairly heavy visual effects series. We were working on the volume at that point, so we had to focus on creating assets. So that took up a lot of our time as well.
I've been a camera person for 30 years, and I fell in love with cinema. I heard there was free film school in France, and I wanted to get into the French film school. I really didn't know anything at the time, but I knew at least how to take pictures. So I said, I'll try for the image department. And then when I miraculously got into the French film school, I fell in love with working with the camera. You're following what's going to be in the movie. So that immediacy that the camera allows is what I loved from the beginning. I'm Kirsten Johnson, and this is my course about documentary cinematography.
So because there's a couple of questions I have in there, but you mentioned the volume, and I'm wondering, like, was it all done within the volume, or because I think about the opening shot in the first scene where like the building's on fire in the background and we come down into the street, like that feels like it would have been a set, but like set up as a set for that type of shot with green screen. But did you do something like that in the volume, or?
The opening sequence, the chase scene was,
Yeah,
I mean, the big swoop down is CG. Then we get into live action where that was on a set.
yeah. But how
So
do
that
you,
was, hmm?
sorry, I was going to say, how do you make those decisions of like what you're going to shoot on the volume versus build a set for?
I think that's the discussions involve how long will it take to build a set, or can we do this on the volume? Are the assets ready to do this? And something above my pay grade is the budget. What will it
Mhm.
cost? You know, is it cheaper to do it on a set, on a volume? That part was decided without my presence for obvious reasons.
Yeah. Now, the other thing that you sort of brought up, you talked about, sitting down and discussing like, okay, we're going to do low angles here with these, the fire group, and we're going to do, high angles in these groups. But like, one of the things I noticed was the light and color, or the light and dark versus the color and stuff. So like in battles, when the Fire Nation showed up, a lot of times it'd be at night, and there'd be like these sort of bursts of color through the fire. So like
Mm.
when you were working with them to figure this out, how did you determine what the color scheme or motifs were going to be for the series?
In my little world, as I see it, um, if we're at nighttime, there's a certain nightlight that for this genre, at least, that I like. The moonlight has a little bit of a green in it. There's
Mhm.
something about it that just makes it really, for me, very extremely, it was very interesting. And then the Fire Nation, we'd have their blast coming out of their hands. So I figured, and then you'd have normal light with normal uh, tungsten light, let's say, that would exemplify the heat of the hands versus the coolness, greenness of the moonlight or the green light. So that's where my mind goes. I'm always trying to find something neutral that'll help accentuate the extremes.
Yeah, it was I just liked how it looked, like the way they always played off each other and sort of had this really beautiful sort of feel to them. Even
Thank
even
you.
in the Airbender sort of community before it gets destroyed,
Mhm.
there's this really great shot where they're sort of in this temple and the lights coming through, and there's sort of like colors that get revealed almost in the scene, which was really beautiful. Now, one of the things is this is very much based on, or it takes its inspiration from Asian culture and Arctic culture. So did you guys do, like, I know you had the original content to look at, but did you guys do research into, Asian cinema, or, look at Arctic filmmaking, whether it be Artani Duat or something like that for inspiration?
Um, I'm positive that our production designer, Michael Wiley, who did an amazing job,
Mhm.
uh, delved deeply into that. And I'd hear him talk about, a lot of the Asian culture. And with Albert at the helm, he was able to, guide the show into that direction. From
Mhm.
my end, I mean, I've shot, it's interesting because I have shot in the snow
Yeah.
up north a bit in the past, and I've lived in Asia. So those experiences in life really helped me out. So I didn't go back to Asian films or Arctic films per
Mhm.
se. I just basically worked with my life experience and brought it to the screen.
Now you talked about earlier about it being very VFX heavy. So as a cinematographer, how did you work with the VFX team to get the look and feel of it? Like I think about the lighting because there would be shots that were completely CG. So to make sure that the lighting matched and what have you.
That's always a fun battle. Or I don't think no, battle is the wrong word, although there were a lot of battle scenes. I worked very closely with the VisFX team, and one director I worked with, I did 2 episodes early on, was Jabbar Rossini, who his background is VFX. So he knew where he was going. And we'd talk about, well, the sun's going to be here, but they're going through clouds. And I go, okay, great. So now I just have to create a bit of a slight, diffusion or flag just to create here. You see my right here on my face,
Mhm.
every once in a while. and just very subtle. And the more subtle it is, in my mind, the more believable it is. So I worked very much with Jabbar on that, on those a couple of episodes, which set the tone. And when I did have questions, we had the VisFX team there all the time, and I'd rely on them saying, okay, where do you see this going down the road? And they would ask me, well, and then conversely, they'd ask me, so Michael, what are your thoughts on this? Where do you want to go? So we know what to do.
Mhm.
It was very collaborative in that way. And to me, that's the fun part. When you're working with extremely talented, experienced people, so much can be created, as you've seen on the show.
Probably one of the smartest things I've ever done for my career. It gave me all the tools that I needed to be able to jump into a new career.
Getting myself into a mindset, thinking like an editor, and being around people that I can talk to on that level was really invaluable to me.
A lot of the things that I learned from that class, I still think about.
I loved the classroom. I loved the computer stations. We built a sense of community.
And it also instills a lot of confidence in you to take that and go out into the world.
After I took the class, I felt very prepared to take the next step.
I owe Manhattan Workshop the career that I have right now. Things have been going great, and I really have the Manhattan Workshop to thank for that.
What's interesting to me, because I think about when watching it, it creates a sense of awe, right? Like there's such a big scale to it and everything, and it almost like, are you frustrated that it doesn't get to go to the theater? Like everyone's going to be watching it on their iPhones and like tablets and stuff, as opposed to, because like I was watching it, I'm like, I wish I could see this on a huge, massive screen.
Well, that's great that you mentioned that, because a couple of weeks ago, Netflix had a premiere in LA at the Egyptian on the big screen. And I was just sitting there going, and I'd seen, they only showed the first episode.
Yeah.
I wish they'd shown all 8. And I'm just sitting there, and about 2/3 into it, and I just clicked, and I'm like, this is a feature. And it really held up on the big screen. So that was very exciting. And then someone brought me back down to reality and said, what you just said, they're going to watch it on their iPads, Michael, relax.
But it is like a feature. That's the thing, is like when I'm watching it, I'm like, this should be on the big screen. That's what's so crazy.
It was really, really cool to see it on big screen, because for television, we never see it on a big screen. You'll go into, your color correct sessions, and they'll have really beautiful monitors, but they're not huge monitors.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you're color grading a feature, you're looking at it on big screen, and then it goes to the big screen.
Yeah. Well, so like you mentioned going to the color correction for something like this. What was your relationship with the colorist? Were you able to build some LUTs beforehand and use them, or how did that relationship work?
I'd say 90% my LUTs were created on set.
Oh, interesting.
And the color correct, what happened, the process was, and it was Netflix was great about this, very collaborative in a sense that once the shows were put together, VisFX still in the works, I would watch the episode on an iPad they provided through Company 3.
Mm-hmm.
And I would write my notes down, and then I would go to remotely Company 3. They were grading in LA, but I'd be here in Vancouver. So I would sit in a session, basically talking to the colorists and post-production via phone, but I'd have the live images in front of me. So then we would just work that way. And it was as if I was in LA. I just couldn't leave Vancouver. I was on project then.
Okay.
And, so they were very, very helpful that way. Yeah, and it was a very seamless process.
Mm-hmm. Now, you said the LUTs were created on set. Was that something like you did with the DIT, or is that something they had? Okay.
Yeah, the DIT and myself, we would just sit there and just do our thing, create a certain look, and I try to keep it fairly straightforward, because I know I have the back half where we can tweak it even further.
Yeah.
And I really don't like locking in myself or, the colorist, months down the road.
Yeah.
Once you lock yourself in, it becomes a laborious effort to unlock it.
Yeah. Now, is there, you got to shoot this series and it's like a beloved story. So is there a particular scene or moment you shot that was your favorite to shoot, or was your one that made you really happy to shoot?
Well, the opening sequence I'm very happy with. To me, when I first saw that, after it was an advanced rough cut, I just went, oh my God, we pulled that one off nicely. There's lots of energy and action. And then I end up going, and then the big battle scene at the beginning, to me, that was really, really well done. And then I go down, what episode? Episode 2, no, 3 or 4, where Katara and Jet are sitting by a campfire. And we're in a completely different world of interpersonal relationship, just that two actors sitting there talking. To me, those are the highlights. And I can go from one extreme to the other visually, in storytelling, where it's frantic battle scene to a heart-to-heart scene. Specifics of what parts, of the show that I like, there's so many, they're countless. I guess because I love the series, the animation series, and I really love what we did as well. The challenge of putting it on, transcribing an animation, a beloved animation series into the live action. But it's that stuff. It's that thing. The action versus the drama of, interpersonal relationships.
So because you talked about being a fan of the series, so were you a fan before shooting this? Like you watched the series?
I had watched the series. I loved it. I'm not one of those people who watch it 4, 5, 6 times, because I have friends who have.
Yeah.
And wow, that's 5, I think it was 5 seasons or something. That's a lot of TV to watch. But yeah, when I watched it, I just went, my goodness, the storytelling, the actors, the character, the comedy, the drama, it was brilliant. So to me, that was a lot of fun. And then when this project came up, I just went, wow, I am a lucky guy.
Wow. Well, it's interesting because you have a career that I think a lot of young cinematographers would love, in the sense of, as a Canadian, you work both in Canada and the US. So how were you able to sort of navigate that and sort of set that up for yourself in a career?
One project at a time. Man, it's interesting because I do mentor in Vancouver at UBC Film. Every year I have a student that I mentor, and when I speak to classes or people, I just say, just keep doing it. Just every day you're doing it, then it turns into weeks, into months, into years, and one day you turn around and you go, I've just done 20 years. So there was no big game plan except just forge ahead and keep doing what I love doing. And now I look back and I go, I would never do that now that I know what to go through. But it's that naive passion that we have, and it's all we can do. That's all we want to do. That's my approach. I mean, I've been doing this for decades, and I still love waking up early in the morning and, either going outside in the hot sun or in the pouring rain or in a studio for months on end. It's fun.
Wow. Now you're a mentor, you've been helping a lot of people. What was something that you learned in your career that you're like, I wish someone had told me when I started?
To be patient and not be too hard on myself. I think that was something, you look at your work and you kind of go, wow, that really is not the best. But you learn from those experiences. I find you learn from the mistakes you've made, and you grow from there. And I mean, when I look at stuff I've done, the parts that I like, and I go, oh, that's cool, great. And I don't give it a second thought, really. But it's the parts that I'm not happy with. I go, okay, how could I have improved that, but not get too down on myself?
Mhm.
And I look at it, last year I had one young man, Austin. I looked at his work and I went, oh man, this guy's pushing me out of my work soon. But which is really encouraging too, because
Yeah.
you know, young cinematographers coming up, and they some of them they're brilliant. And I think what I impart all the time is it's about storytelling. That's what we do for a living. Lighting is one thing, camera work is another, but we have to serve the story as best as we can.
It's funny that you mentioned like the young, this young cinematographer coming up who's got so much talent, because they can access the equipment so early now, and they can start playing with it at a younger age. I feel like, because when I was getting going, it was like, well, you got to get an Arri BL. It's like, oh, I can't afford that, like, yeah.
And then you have to buy film and process it.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I got to spend a minimum or ask for ends from Kodak and see if you can get something. So it's like the accessibility has almost propelled the craft of it in a weird way.
Well, it's really cool because someone can go out with $1,000 camera, let's say, or you could buy a decent camera, video camera or digital camera on eBay. And then you can get an editing program and a color correction program on your laptop or on your computer. And you're a filmmaker. I mean, I had to, go through university and, like you said, get short ends from people and beg, borrow, and steal and work part a lot just to have enough money to buy or process the film.
Yeah.
It's a different world, which is great, because then hopefully we'll have, fresher stories and
see new ideas, which is what is exciting.
Which is always fun to have new ideas.
Well, thank you so much for letting me interview you today.
Oh, that's it?
Yeah, that's that's it.
No. Well, thank you so much, Gordon, for taking the time reaching out. Well, have you watched a whole series, all 8 episodes?
I'm 4 in, because I have a little daughter, and so I have to wait for her to go to bed, because I'm like, I don't know if you're ready for this yet.
I remember those days. Yes, I ended up early in my career. When she was growing up, I tried to work on shows that she could watch, so that we could watch Daddy's work together. So
that'd be good. Yeah.
So that was fun, but yeah, this is a little dark at times.
Yeah. And I'm like, she's on the cusp. And so I was like really contemplating it, but I was like, I better not, just in case.
Well, she'll love Momo.
Yeah. Oh, she definitely will. Well, that's it for this week, everyone. Make sure to check us out at filmmakeru.com. And of course, follow us on Instagram at filmmaker_u. I'm Gordon Burkell. Thanks for watching.